Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Novelina Filzah and I would like to do a presentation about Hedges' expression in Confessional Discourse of Ida Craddock Suicide Notes. The first thing that I would like to talk about is the introduction. So suicide note can be the way the suicides express feeling and difficulties that cause them suicide. Along with confessing their feeling, some possibilities that cause them suicide can be identified. The possibilities which are delivered by expressing doubt in telling their story can be expressed by using hedges. Due to this reason, this study is aimed to analyze the use of Hedges' expressions in Craddock's confessions through her suicide notes. So, what are hedges? According to Mulatsi in 2008, hedges are linguistic resources that convey the fundamental characteristic of doubt and certainty. Hedges are words whose job is to make things fizzier or less fizzy. The use of hedges depends on the context of how it should be followed. The term hedges are simply a group of words that has a function to communicate. They modify the speakers in toning down their statement to reduce the risk of what people say depending on the communicative context. So there are 7 types of hedges. The first is modal auxiliary verbs, which are the most widely used by people to express our uncertainty towards some things in written or spoken form. The most tentative model are may, might, can, could, will, would, shall, and should. The example of modal auxiliary verb that can be found in Craddock's notes is provided here. I wish to call attention to some of the salient features of Chomskyism in the hope that the public may be led to put down this growing menace to the liberties of the people. And the second type of hedges is modal lexical verb, which is also called speech adverbs because it is used to conveying doubt and evaluating rather than describing a thing. Some verbs of modal lexical verbs are to seem, to appear, to believe, to assume, to suggest, to estimate, to tend, to think, to argue, to indicate, to propose, and to speculate. Uh, Unfortunately, there are no modal lexical verbs in Craddock's suicide note. The third type of hedges is adjectival, adverbial, and nominal phrases. There are three types here. The first is probability adjectives, which contain words like probable, possible, likely, or unlikely. And the second is nouns, which are claim, assumption, possibility, suggestion, and estimate. And the last is adverbs, with words like apparently, perhaps, probably, possibly, likely, practically, presumably, and virtually. The example of the sentence in the suicide notes of Craddock is on the slide. When we reflect that Anthony Comstock has himself read perhaps more obscene books and has gazed upon perhaps more lewd pictures than has any other one man in the United States. And then the fourth is approximators of degree, quantity, frequency, and time. This is used to deliver imprecision of quantity or probable measurement of something in particular. Some forms of this type include about a lot of, approximately, generally, often, occasionally, roughly, usually, somewhat, and somehow. There are no this type of hedges in the suicide notes. And then there is introductory phrases, which used to express personal thought of speakers or writers and direct involvement. For instance, like, I believe it is our view that to our knowledge, and we feel that are used to this type of hedges. The example is provided here. I believe that Mr. Comstock takes pleasure in lodging, blah, blah, blah. And then there is if clauses, which expresses the possibility of certain condition. It means that there is something to be fulfilled before something can be done. It is found through the use of phrases like if anything, if true, if only, and etc. The example is, each time that I have been arrested, I have escaped by a compromise. But when I came to New York, that if again attacked by conservatism, I would stand my ground and fight to the death. Then the last type of hedges is compound hedges. This type is made up of several hedges, such as modal auxiliary combines with lexical verb with a hedging content. For example, it would appear it has double, triple, or quadruple hedges, such as it may suggest that it seems reasonable to assume that, and it would seem somewhat unlikely that. The example in the suicide notes is on the slide. Perhaps it may be that in my death, more than in my life, the American people may be shocked into investigating the dreadful state of affair which permits blah blah blah. And then functions of hedges. This is the table of function of hedges. So there are three functions of hedges, which are minimize the threat to face, ways of being more precise in reporting result, and politeness strategy. The minimize the threat to face function include adjectival, adverbial, and nominal phrases, and if clauses. The example of the words are presumably, perhaps, and if. And then the second ways of being more precise in reporting results include modal auxiliary verbs, introductory phrases, and compound hedges. The words are may, would, and I believe. And the last, politeness strategies, contain if clauses. The phrases is like, if only. So here I would like to explain more about the functions of hedges. The first function is minimize the threat to face. This function was used as a reason for avoiding humiliating other people and making them feel uncomfortable of what was claimed. Based on the data, phrases presumably, perhaps, and the use of if clause were found as the reason why Craddock used hedges on her statement. The use of phrases might show strong uncertainty of the truth of what she had claimed. Her uncertainty about her statement was also found in using if clauses, which was to minimize the threat toward the conservatism. And the second function of hedges is ways of being more precise, which was used to represent the writer's understanding and to negotiate an accurate representation of the state. There were three types of hedges that used by Craddock on her notes that could be categorized to this function, which are modal auxiliary verb, introductory phrase. Yeah, there are only two. And then politeness strategy. was used to express Craddock criticism towards Comstock that prohibited her writing to be circulating in public. It was categorized as negative lightness because she showed a disagreement of what Comstock did to her books and showed that she wanted to be respected to have a freedom of writing and living. And then the embodiment of Hedges in the confessional discourse. Generally, the findings found that Hedges supported in conveying criticism and Craddock's speech to the public. She used Hedges to deliver her opinion, claim, and statement that contained criticism to people who were related to her case, such as Anthony Comstock. Hedges were also used in delivering her expectation and wish to the public to make them realize of the people's liberty condition. She used some Hedges words such as "I believe" and "perhaps" to show that her are sensitive because what she claimed were based on her opinion. While confessing her opinion, she expressed uncertainty to avoid making people uncomfortable with her statement and to tone down her statement to make it less strong to be an opinion. Then there is confessional discourse to support telling personal story. Along with confessing the problem and difficulties, the cause of death could be recognized by reading Ida Craddock's suicide notes. She shared her experiences facing the demon and persecution by Anthony Comstock because of her writing, which was considered as obsolete literature. However, by confessing her desire to get the freedom of living, she gave self-awareness to the readers that every woman had the right to live freely. She also demanded her freedom of voice through her writing, freedom of religion, and freedom of living as a free woman. Her inability to get her freedom finally led her to commit suicide. So, in conclusions, Ida Craddock used Hedges' expressions while confessing her feeling through the suicide notes. The confessions were delivered to tell her personal story about her cause of death. Through her confession, she gave self-realization and awareness to the public about people's liberty condition. Also, she raised questions on her confession to let the public thought of the society's condition. Thank you. That's all for my presentation about Hedges in Ida Craddock's suicide notes. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.